All right. Hope everyone enjoyed his coffee break and voted online for the Ideathon and startup battle competitions. Please take a moment to download the app ArabNet Beirut in order to follow the agenda and connect with other attendees. Now, allow me to introduce Dumet Raidy, Managing Director of Raidy Printing Group, to tell us more how 3D printing is becoming a need.
Well, hello everybody. Thank you for being here. The presentation is actually, the topic of my presentation is 3D printing a need? 2 years ago, Raidy Printing Group introduced desktop 3D printing to Lebanon, and this was the question I was hearing from a lot of people. Why do I need a 3D printer? We're going to start with the slogans we have adopted to better define and explain 3D printing. Bring any design to life. Today we can literally bring any design to life. Our second slogan is discover what you can create. Today we can create any object on a 3D modeling software, and we can really print it and discover what we have created. Our third slogan is print the future today. A couple of years, let's say 5 to 10 years from now, if we would have said to anybody that we are printing an object, it would have taken us for crazy people. Today, we can actually print any object on a desktop 3D printer. What is 3D printing? It's three very simple phases. First, we need to design the object on a 3D modeling software. Then we need to import it into a slicing software which comes together with a 3D printer, and we are ready to print it. How does it work? Let's have a look at the 30-second video just to better understand how it works. So this is the 3D printer that is loaded with the red filament. The file is already inserted into the machine, and the machine is printing layer by layer. Here we can see, for instance, a shoe that was printed using a red PLA filament. That's the final product. What are the different 3D printing techniques? Today, 3D printing is a very wide domain, and there are different technologies that explains and that differentiates from 3D printing. I did not cover all of the techniques that are today available, but the ones that are most commonly used. The first one being FDM, Fused Deposition Modeling. These are desktop printers that come in a very variety of sizes, and they print using three main quality. The first one being PLA, it's a derivative from plastic. Second one being ABS, and the third one being flexible material. So we just need to load the filament into the machine, and the machine is printing layer over layer. The second one is called SLA or DLP, stereolithography. These are 3D printers that use resin instead of filaments, and are most commonly used for the jewelry cast and for dental. We have the liquid deposition modeling, LDM. It's a technology that is very similar to the FDM technology, but instead of loading a filament, we are loading clay, we are loading concrete, we are loading any material that can be used as porcelain and as for construction material. Here on the left, we can see the biggest 3D printer available today. It's a 12-meter 3D printer that can print a building on 2 floors in concrete. This machine last year was 5 meters tall. This year it's 12 meters. So I think in a couple of years, most of the buildings that we will be living in will be 3D printed. In fact, Chef Mohammed in Dubai is quite optimistic. He thinks that by 2030, 25% of Dubai's buildings will be 3D printed. Which industries today are benefiting from 3D printing? First one is the graphic design. Whenever you are creating any logo for your brand, you can 3D print it, and you can really see the proportions and the feel of the actual logo and design. Here, for instance, it's Ehdeniyat. They have 3D printed their logo to decide which one they would adopt. Architecture. Architects today, they can 3D print any model they design. It will help them better see proportions, better see the volumes, better understand the design. Because there's a say that says, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, a prototype is worth 1,000 pictures. By having a prototype in front of us, we can really see and understand and check the volumes and proportions and perspectives that cannot be seen on a 2D screen. Prototyping. Whenever a company wants to launch a product today, instead of going and doing a mold and paying a lot of money and time, because it will take a couple of days or weeks to produce a prototype with a minimum quantity, they can 3D print their prototype themselves. If there's a mistake, they can reprint it again. And these are things that can be done in your office, in your lab. You don't need to go back to a supplier, whereas in China or in Europe or wherever, to produce your object, you can produce it yourself. Product design. Any designer today that wants to produce, here for instance we're seeing some lamps or some bars, they are doing it on a small model using 3D printers to understand exactly and to make sure that the proportions are right, and then they are going into mass production. Engineering. Anybody is coming out with a new hardware, a new product, a new case. By doing it using 3D printing, you save time and you can iterate it as many times as you want to fine-tune it and get the perfect result at the end. Jewelries. Today, using the DLP or the SLA technology, any jeweler can do its own molds for jewelries. There are different types of resin. The one that is most commonly used for jewelry is the castable resin. So today, any jeweler or jewelry designer has the freedom to produce his own molds himself. Dental and medical. In Europe today, whenever somebody is going to a surgery, they have a 3D printed model of the object or of the organ or the bone structure they are operating. Because the MRI file itself is a 3D file, a 3D compatible file. So they just print it, and they can explain to the patient exactly what's the problem, so the patient can understand why the surgery is happening, and they can discuss among others, among the doctors, and see exactly things that could not be clearly seen on a MRI file or on a normal radiology. Same applies to dental. Education. When I was in school, I remember there was the MS-DOS classes and Windows classes because computer was starting to be part of our day-to-day life. Today, every school in Europe, in the US, and in Lebanon are equipped with 3D printing labs because they can teach the students what is 3D printing, how to operate a machine, because we believe that most of the students, if not all of them, that are graduating from today's schools and universities will be working or using 3D printing in their career, whether directly or indirectly. The fashion industry. Today we have a lot of designers that are using end product in 3D printing. We're going to see it now in a couple of slides from here. We're going to see some very renowned fashion designers that are using 3D printing, whether for bags, for shoes, or for accessories, or even for dresses themselves. The food. Today, there are a lot of restaurants in the world that serve you 3D printed food using 3D printed forks and knives and plates. You'll be sitting on a 3D printed chair and you'll be eating on a 3D printed table. We're going to see an example later on. Construction, as we have said, these are small examples of how they are building concrete and building real buildings using 3D printing. Spare parts. I'm sure a lot of us have once needed a spare part that they could not find. Today with 3D printing, you can 3D print this part. And the procedure is as simple as downloading a picture from the internet and printing it on a regular printer. Today, there are sites where you can download the part and 3D print it on your 3D printer. Art industries. A lot of artists today are developing sculptures using 3D printing in different material and in different technologies. Let's explore now quickly some interesting case studies and companies that have used and that have grown thanks to 3D printing. Brito Charette, these are the tables that we were discussing before. He's an interior designer who is using 3D printing to do a prototype of his designer's bars. Same applies to John Christie for his chairs. Eventury is a company that develops car intake system for Audi RS or BMW, and they use these parts using 3D printing. Matt Architecture is a UK company that creates architectural model, and they are using 3D printing to better check proportions and the urban look of the area where they plan on building a building. The Victoria Hand Project, they create customized prosthetic hands for amputees in third world countries. There's a primary school also that throughout their STEM system, they create objects using 3D printing where the students themselves are using them. Stacy, she produces cookies using 3D printing, whether the cookie cutter or 3D printer or the objects themselves. Michael Winstone is a very well-known artist that sells his pieces very expensive, and he uses 3D printing to produce his objects. Today, an artist can create a model and print the final product. He doesn't need to go to a third party to produce his sculptures. Golden Century is a company in the UK that uses 3D printing to produce as well the cast and their jewelries. Makerman, as we can see, there's the Lebanese flag. It's a Lebanese company that produces 3D printed casts. Instead of having a cast the traditional way, now we can have a 3D printed cast that is customized to the size of our hand or of our leg or whatever part needs a cast. Siemens, they use 3D printing to produce the components, even if 3D printing today is done using plastic, but they can use this part to produce their molds and then have stainless steel products. Aram is a French company that uses 3D printing to produce the heels of their shoes. We have seen a lot recently in the news that fashion designers are launching new shoes with different height of heels. You can really unlock and lock new heels. So you can do the final product or the prototype using 3D printing. Raidy Tuner, again, there's the Lebanese flag. It's a Lebanese company that produces automatic tuners for guitars. And they have gone through all the prototype phases using 3D printing. Now that they are into mass production, they're not using it anymore. But the development phase was done thanks to 3D printing. Izem, again, the Lebanese flag, it's a Lebanese company, and they are creating a controlled robotic. And the prototype phase is being done using 3D printing as well. McDonald's, they're creating a new straw. They're exploring and checking what would be the best straw to have the feel. And they're doing it using 3D printing. The Little Engineer, they are present here as well. They are producing 3D printed planes to teach students about robotics. Clear Vision is a company that is using 3D printing to produce customized sunglasses using flexible material and is specialized for children. Modeo, it's a Lebanese company that is creating furniture. And they are going through the prototype phase using 3D printing as well. Andrea Reggiani and Davide Tuberga, two Italian designers that produce ceramic vases using the LDM technology we have discussed earlier to create their vases. Boeing, more than 20,000 parts of our planes today are done using 3D printing. And they anticipate that 10 years from now, the planes will be 40% lighter, but as solid thanks to 3D printing as well. Iris van Herpen is an international designer that produces and that designs the dresses and the shoes and all her accessories using 3D printing as well. Luke Dennison is an 8-year-old child that was born without a left arm. And thanks to 3D printing, he could have his arm back, and as we can see, he is horseback riding today. Modern Industry Products, a Lebanese company as well, that uses prototyping to produce its bottles. Food Inc. is a company, it's the restaurants we were talking about earlier, where you have your food, your chairs, your cutlery, everything it's a 3D printed restaurant in Barcelona. What are the main advantages of 3D printing? There are actually 4 main advantages. The first one is print on demand. Today, we no longer need to have a warehousing facility to store our spare parts or our products. We just 3D print on demand whenever we want whenever we need any part. Customization. Whenever we're talking mass production, we all know that we have one model and we go through a mass production. With 3D printing, we can customize each item in terms of size, in terms of weight, in terms of color. So customization is a big advantage that 3D printing can give. Complex designs, there are some complex designs like the ones we have seen throughout the presentation that can only be done using 3D printing. And in my opinion, the most important one is the decentralized production. Today, anybody can produce any part wherever he wants. If we need a spare part, let's say for our car, we have a damaged spare part. We need to go to the local agent. They need to produce it, let's say, in Germany. They need to ship it back to us. Thanks to 3D printing, anybody can print the part. It might sound futuristic because today the desktop solution are using PLA or plastic derivative material, but I think a couple of years from now, the technology will lead us to really 3D print any part we need. So our initial question was, is 3D printing a need? I think thanks to the samples we have shared together, my answer is yes. Thank you. Any questions? You can 3D print today for the food itself. Instead of loading the printer with clay, you can load the printer with actual food. So let's say real. Ketchup, chocolate, mustard. Yes, it will 3D print, yes. 3D printing, it's all about the temperature of the nozzle. Let's say you are printing plastic, you need to print, let's say in 200 degrees. No, you can use it because you change the extruder. There's the head that uses plastic. The same machine can print clay, you just change the head, and you can use this head to print in chocolate, to print in any material. Yeah, same machine. Please. Yes. Well, there are a lot of sites that provide you with free models to download, but I think when it comes to engineering parts, you need to purchase it.
Like if I've got a car that is manufactured in 1970 or something, and I need those parts that do not exist anymore.
Yes.
Like how can I?
And they are using 3D printing exactly for this purpose. You could download the file from the manufacturer themselves.
So the manufacturers provide those 3D
eventually,
models?
yes. Very sooner than expected.
Oh, all right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.